I know I'm very lucky to get to travel nearly as much as I do. Today, I'm traveling to San Francisco to visit family and to get some video games. Now, I've already made a video about the Bay Area, and I love the Bay Area. And there's more video game stores that I could go to in the Bay Area. But before I go up to Sacramento, I'm going to stop at one store in Alameda.
We flip and dip, let the needle skip, feel the rhythm, let it rip. Spin that track, don't turn it back, let the bass line make us trip. Flip and dip, the vibe is tight, groove so smooth, we flip tonight. Drop the sound, let's play around, find the beat and set it right. Flip and dip, don't let it slip, hold the moment, make that trip. Flip and dip, don't let it slip, hold the moment, take the trip, set flip and dip, flip and dip. Get the stuff that you're looking for, and then we'll do it much, much more.
Hey, so we're out here in Alameda. We're going to a store called the Experience Share. It's nowhere near Sacramento, but we're going to go anyways because it's a pretty good store. Yeah. Now, if you've checked out my video about some of the best video game stores in the Bay Area, then you will definitely see this particular store. It's great, and I really like it. Some of the major pillars of what I think make a very good video game store are branding, community, video game selection, and price. And mixed on top of all of that is customer service. Not all of those things are actually easy to accomplish. In school, I studied graphic design and branding, so I'm always very aware of how much branding plays into anything. Now, one of my favorite ways to express branding is through the development of a character, and Lost Ark is a great example of that. The Experience Share has a character mascot that's a ton of fun, and this character shows up in merchandise as well, which is a lot of fun. And they carry this character all the way through to their bags and tag, which helps to create a branded world, the Experience Share world. Now, I do have a personal bias because I love this type of branding. On the left is like a character I've developed for myself, and on the right is my logo version of that character. I've always called this character Dinobot, but it's basically just an illustrated dinosaur version of myself. Well, anyways, back to the actual store. They have a terrific selection and their prices are pretty on point. And if you're wearing a piece of clothing with their logo on it, they give you a 5% off, which is nice. Now, one of the things that's really hard to bring together in a video game store is a sense of community. A lot of stores do this by organizing events like swap meets and that sort of thing. When a store doesn't have a ton of space and they can't really organize events, their other option is just, chatting with their customers and just having good customer service. Now, this is no sneak diss whatsoever, but ironically, customer service is very hard for video game stores. I feel like a lot of people that play video games are also naturally introverts, so finding a gamer that wants to work at a video game store is probably relatively easy, but finding an extrovert that's really good at interacting with a whole bunch of introverts might be a little bit harder. I'm super happy to report that everybody that works here is super nice. Everybody from the owner, to the people that help with their social media, to the people that are just like fixing their consoles all the time. By the way, this store is super good about imports. If you're at all interested in getting imported games at pretty fair prices, this place has so many good ones. They also happen to have a really good selection of N64 games and one game that I needed for my N64 set. Overall, this store was decently sized, but I think if it could benefit from anything, I would say that they have enough cool stuff that they could probably have a store double this size. I'm actually super glad that I have some family that lives relatively near this store, so every time I go out to Alameda, California, I have the opportunity to come out here and see the store again. Now, I'm not going to give the store a rating because I already rated it in a video about the best video game stores in the Bay Area, and frankly, I should probably make a part 2 about the Bay Area because there's plenty of stores in San Jose that I just didn't have time to get to. But I will say if you're ever in San Francisco, or specifically Alameda, you should check out this store. Now it's time to head out to Sacramento. But first things first, let's go over what I got. I got Vampire Hunter, which is Darkstalkers. I also got Nights into Dreams, which I don't have the US version, and the US version has gotten really expensive. I also have been collecting Nintendo Powers, and they had a Nintendo Powers that spanned from Super Nintendo all the way up to GameCube that I really needed to fill out my collection. And the prices, overall, not bad. I found that a lot of video game stores sell their Nintendo Powers for about 20 bucks a pop, so whenever I can find Nintendo Powers for less than 10 bucks, it's an automatic pickup. These all had sleeves and were carded, which makes it really easy to keep them super nice. Nintendo Power is basically propaganda for Nintendo, but it's really cool to see all the ads inside these old magazines. And that means we're only 37 games away from a complete N64 set. Now, the store I'm going to in Sacramento is actually one I heard about on the Pixel podcast. The owner of this store talked about it on that show. So I thought, hey, why not check it out? If I'm gonna check it out, might as well check it out with my son. Now, first off, this store is absolutely enormous, about the size of a warehouse. It's a place that's set up for community events. Now right off the bat, you know I've been collecting for a complete N64 set, and there's a ton of bangers here that I do not have. Now one part of me wanted to pick up Sculptor's Cut and Stunt Racer, but if I would have done that, I would have blown my entire budget for game hunting at the first store I went to in Sacramento. That gets me to my first point about this store. It's an absolute warehouse, and they have multiple copies of many of the hits that you've been looking for forever, and stuff I absolutely never see, like the Star Fox Super Weekend Competition cartridge. Oh my gosh. If there's a game that is your absolute grail and it's been eluding you for years, I can almost guarantee that you could possibly find it here. And hey, check it out, Gabbo's been here. I've never met the guy, but he seems like a solid dude based on internet. By the way, my son wanted me to make sure I got a picture of this Wiggler. They also have a huge selection of loose things that are a little bit cheaper. I have more than a few not so rare games that I've been looking for that have been evading me. There's so many cool things here to pick up that you might enjoy. I've got to say this, I feel like if I would have came here while an event was going on, I would have found even more things to look at. One of the hardest things for a video game store to do is to build community in their area, and this store seems to have a pretty good plan about that. Have a large space, host events. What I like more than grails are oddities. I love the 3DO, and I love to find Gamecom games, especially sealed ones in blister packs. Now as far as pricing goes, a lot of the things here are sitting around price starting or maybe a little bit more. But one of the things I always say is if you're picking up a video game at a video game store, you have to think about overhead costs. This place is about the size of an airplane hangar, so I'm guessing the rent is a little high, but that's also why you can get pretty much any game you're looking for here. I've been looking for that Christmas Night sampler disc, but I'm going to leave it here because I have the Japanese version. Now beyond the games, they've also got a bunch of other cool things like this giant Halo helmet or this flagpole Target Mario. This store is absolutely filled with bangers, and it seems like the right place for somebody that's trying to collect some heavy hitters. If you're ever looking for a really good store, or you're in Sacramento, you should definitely stop by. I got some heavyweights out of the way, so that means I'm only 33 games away from a complete N64 set. Whenever I'm looking for a new retro video game store, I just Google retro video game store and see what I can find. This one popped up and it's called Fair Game. Let's see what's inside. Now right off the bat, this store had a bunch of really rare stuff, but at the exact same time, some of the prices here were several $100s above price charting. And while I don't normally criticize pricing, I kind of have to flag this. Now on one hand, a lot of stores have these kind of super rare games and they just won't sell them. They make them museum pieces. I guess it's kind of a strategy to have games that are super duper rare at very high prices if you kind of don't want to sell them in the first place. The staff was pretty nice, and it's always fun to look at things, especially things you basically never see in other stores. But at the exact same time, I think it was just a little too rich for my blood. They had some games that were more filler that you could pick up at cheaper prices, so it might be fun to come here to browse, maybe look at some stuff that's a little bit cheaper here and there, and look at some rarities as well. I didn't even know there was a big box PC version of this game. But this is kind of where I always point out, hey, check out price charting, check out sold comps on eBay, and then at the end of the day, factor in overhead costs, the pricing of the location, and then also think about things like, hey, here is a place where you get to look at the thing and check out the condition of the thing, which is something you can't necessarily do online easily. A lot of the time, stores have point of sale systems too, so they might have priced these things earlier on when they were a little bit more expensive, and then not change the price later. You can also try haggling. I didn't. So, if you want to go here, you should. Googling these stores means you end up going through a lot of different neighborhoods and different places you probably never would have been to. That's why it's always been an interesting way to explore an area you're unfamiliar with. When I Googled this store and saw Computer Booter, I wasn't sure it was going to be a video game store. But as I walked up and saw Link and Samus, I knew, hey, they might have some video games. Now right off the bat, I didn't know Prima made unofficial strategy guides, and I kind of love how generic this cover is. Look at that. This store had a bunch of video games, but they also repaired video game consoles and computers. Decent size overall. I found a Nintendo Power magazine I didn't have yet, and it was crispy, so I picked it up. Now every time I see a whole bunch of Wii U games, I check and see if they have a Scribblenauts that is actually a rare one, and at this case they did. This one is the Green Lantern version. If you see on the front here, it has a little sticker that says there's a DVD inside. They had a whole bunch of rare things here, and the prices varied here and there, but it was still neat to see all of this stuff. Like, I'm guessing all these copies of Futurama were priced a long time ago, and they just haven't been updated. I feel like I remember watching the Dot Hack animes when I was a kid, but I don't remember anything about them. I like unique reproduction cases. These were all the exact size of the cartridge, so they were really small, but it was just kind of neat that you could get this artwork, but know that it's not like faking you out. This place had both high and low prices, but when I dug, I could find some things I liked. Like for example, this PlayStation TV is a steal at $100. And they had a whole bunch of limited run games and other limited release games that weren't priced too high. And I'm not gonna lie, even though I'm not really talking about Fire and Ice here, it made me realize that the prices at Fire and Ice were very reasonable for the region. If you're in this general area, you should definitely check this place out. It's a pretty decent video game store, and I like that they repair stuff too. I got a Green Lantern Scribblenauts, I also got this copy of Nintendo Power, and I got a Super Game Boy PAL edition. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Super Game Boy, so getting a big box, which I'm also a huge fan of, is totally awesome. I also happen to have these little protectors, which I got a bunch of for some reason, so it was great because I could finally put this protector to use. It's kind of funny, the PAL versions are just ever so slightly smaller than the US big boxes, but they're pretty close. And I didn't really notice it until I looked at it, but this is the German PAL version. Spiele deine Gameboy-Spiele auf dem Super Nintendo in Farbe. I think that means you can play Game Boy in color with the Super Nintendo. And that's 32 games left in the complete N64 set. You ever go somewhere and it reminds you a lot of a different place? Well, that was the Cave for me. It was a really unique place in and of itself, but it reminded me a lot of a store I went to while I was in Vegas called Zia Records. Now, to call this place a video game store is kind of a misnomer. They're not really that. They're more of a collectibles store that happens to also have video games, which was good for me because I promised my kid I'd get him a toy, and they had this sweet Ben 10 toy that he wanted. Now, I'm a huge fan of physical media, and video games are typically the only part of physical media that I'll just go ahead and pay a premium for, but overall, if you're into like tapes, records, and that sort of thing, they have a whole bunch of these, and they are not badly priced. They actually are really well priced. And I'm not gonna lie, when you go video game hunting as much as I do, sometimes it's nice to go to a store that's focus isn't video games. When video games aren't a store's primary source of income, often you'll see that prices vary a lot more. Like $30 for a U-Force is a terrific price, but there's just no way I was going to be able to put this on a plane with me. One thing I thought was kind of unique and hilarious is that there were scary masks all over this store, like wall to wall. But my kid was actually super scared of that. So if you're a parent, you should keep that in mind. But it was still super awesome. I just explained to him, hey, they're not real, and they're fun. And then he ended up falling in love with this Terminator, which he thought was super cool because he really likes skeletons. I thought this was a really cool find. I have a friend that really likes Ken Griffey Jr., so whenever I find Ken Griffey Jr. video games, I just pick them up for him. And for $10, great price. This box was kind of interesting. It was a Super NES controller, but this era is like the Super NES Junior controller, and funny enough, these are very commonly bootlegged. So I wasn't sure if this was real or not, but I think like 25% this might have been fake. I really wish I could have spent a little more time here looking at all the really cool stuff, because in addition to video games, they had so many toys and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, going through this footage again, I sighed about 15 times after seeing that it was only $125. If I were rating this store totally and only as a video game store, I would say, that was okay. But I think of this place more as like a Savers, if a Savers or a thrift store only had top-notch, very well curated stuff. It's such a cool place, and it's totally worth going. Also, no secret here, I'm a huge Hall & Oates fan, and they just had so many Hall & Oates records that I don't have. And just to let you know, I have so many Hall & Oates records, and I've been looking for that Steely Dan record, so I cleaned up with records here. Like $6 a record for really good ones, not a bad price, not at all. And I'm not gonna lie, I went to the store near the end of my day, and Sacramento is like 2 hours away from San Francisco where I was staying. So I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna go in here. I am so glad I went in here. Such a cool store. The Cave is a must go, for sure. As a video game store, it's just okay. As a great store, it's a great store. It's actually kind of funny. I was at a store called The Cave, and I was mentioning that I was going to all the video game stores I could in Sacramento, and they mentioned this one. Now, first things first, I thought it was really interesting that this place had a giant garage door opening. Second things first, Tomodachi Life is very expensive. This game kind of looks interesting. Diamond Trust of London. So mysterious. And hey, check it out, a copy of Pocket Monster Coliseum. It's kind of interesting. Sonic Adventure 2 has spiked a lot since the Sonic 3 movie. This game's actually kind of like an anime version of Dragon's Lair. It looks sick. This store overall had some pretty good vibes, though I must admit it might just be because I love Earthbound so much. This is one of those Dreamcast RPGs that I was always curious about. I never played it, but I thought the art style looked neat. This is a dog-based tennis game. It's a lot of fun, and if you look up Pop and Smash, you can find it. They also have a nice little import section. I'm kind of looking to fill out the rest of my Japanese exclusive set as well, but I'm not going super hard for it. It's just whenever I see one for relatively cheap, I pick it up. Like this game, I don't have it, but it's 35 bucks and I probably can't play it, so I'll look around and see if I can find it for like 5 bucks somewhere else. I'm a sucker for light gun games, but I like stuff like Area 51. This one's neat too though, Point Blank. I've been looking for a Zelda Wii U for a while, but I'm not picking it up today. This is a super duper rare Japanese only promotional item, and I've only seen this thing about 5 times, and that includes in Japan. I think my favorite version of Harvest Moon is actually the Super Nintendo version. It's so fun, and if it wasn't for 100 bucks, I'd probably pick it up. This was a really solid store, and I'm really glad I stopped by. It's just filled with personality, and it was a very nice hidden gem of a store. If you're ever in this general area, you should definitely check it out. This is probably one of my favorite arcade racers of all time, and I'm super glad I picked it up. But hey, that means I'm only 30 games away from a complete N64 set. So let me know what you think. Did I get to all the Sacramento stores? Do you agree with my ratings? Did I miss some good ones? Let me know. And for one reason or another, I'm often traveling, so let me know if you have a favorite video game store that you'd like me to visit. And if you like this, consider liking and subscribing for more of this type of entertainment.